Alrighty. There's a lot of religious stuff going on in the world at the moment. Big, heavy energies moving. The Pope's flying a helicopter over the original basilica in which the Council of Nicaea was first had. Was it 1,500 years ago? 1,700 years ago? I don't know. A while after a bloke walked around named Jesus, who had quite a lot to say, and still has quite a lot to say. He kind of speaks through the ages, doesn't he? Like an eternal voice, asking his readers, or the readers of people speaking about his work, to commune with him and to be in harmony with God in the Holy Trinity, so to speak. If only these people were doing that, I think, is for the Pope to say there's an Arian, or is it Arian heresy? Yeah, the Arian heresy is coming from you lot, including the Church of England. Jesus is a consciousness that exists in all men and women. And from courage, you can access it, and then you are in that. It is the collective Jesus. Like, we're all the collective Jesus to make up the third realm. And so it, like, to be fearful or hold back is the Arian heresy, because you're not doing. So every pope, they didn't know. It's hard. It's complicated. It's very difficult. Who knows? It's a long time. Every pope has been participating in the Arian prophecy, because he hasn't brought the kingdom of heaven to earth. But, pretty difficult thing to do. I suppose it's a lot easier now. There's the internet and things like that. But it's not an individual. It's the collective awareness that collectively we hold the power equal to God, because there actually is no separation. It's complete communion with God. Humans like to separate things. We like to cut all these different things up. It probably more than likely comes from like a simple thing, like you have collected the day's things and you put them out in front of yourself so you can see, and you can, you can divide them up. But it just doesn't make sense to do this now. So we have continuously the people that are getting promoted to the top of. So, and even there, it's like you're doing it. Oh, there's an Arian heresy. Oh, well, you're just chopping things up. You're dividing things up again. That is the work of the devil that you speak of, to bring everyone together. And this doesn't mean to bring everyone together in some type of utopian socialist communism. It means to bring everyone together under the ideal that the equal power of God exists in all of us. And to reinforce it, then because of that, there's nothing to be afraid of, to act. The instinct to divide is held in the material. So if you are participating in division, you are worshipping the material. rather than the Spirit. But it's complicated. I've been raised in constant communion with a device that projects the physical in the non-physical. Like if I had had to collect all the things that I've produced on the internet or I've consumed, like where would I be? I'd have to have a giant castle. I'd have to commit 20 years of my life to finance and pay for this cathedral and protect it and defend it, and so we can see why that we've had all these. So it's not like we're anything special. We just have access to this, and it gives us a different view. So we're seeing through the lens of this. It's kind of squished everything together. So there's no point in division. To divide things up. We don't need to divide Christianity up. And then straight after that comes, we don't need to divide the Abrahamic religions up, because they're the same story. Now, this is where it gets complicated. But this means that Jesus wasn't, I'll have to be very careful. How would I say this? The reason Christ was king is because he displayed it displayed this non-separation with death, with his own death. It won't work again because they won't dare kill anyone that does it. But every other prophet and say is acting in the same spirit or in the same consciousness. But the reason that Jesus is king is because he concreted it into existence. But it changes throughout time and throughout what we're dealing with. So the manifestation of Christ in each era or each epoch will be completely different, because it's whatever is needed at the time. And it's like a reference point to come back to the whole. But it exists in all of us. So it's the whole of humanity working unknowingly, unconsciously, to expose and to triangulate itself back to itself and back to God and back to the world. It's like a key on a map, or like a scale on the map, or compass on the map, direction. It allows us to experiment in this chaotic, random mess, and then we come back to Christ is our anchor to keep us all together, to stop us from dividing again. Because the concept of division is held in the material. The division of heresies is necessary to maintain the true center. and they will spiral back. We have to remember that, like, Jesus was a heretic. And because we're moving through time and because our environment is constantly changing, it will always require heresy. So heresy is the true doctrine. As long as you're always focusing back. If you're attempting to create something new, and this is where the truth, it's like, this isn't the time to speak of a heresy 1700 years ago. This is the time to speak of the new heresies which are taking place on handheld devices, which are encapsulating people in disconnected, is dividing people up down to the individual level and severing their connection to the whole. And that affects us all. That makes all of us subject to this kind of chaos. And they're not hiding it either. They're not hiding the fact that they're distributing a heresy, and not a it's not a. So think of, if you talk of this Arian heresy and the division of the church, it's like this is 1,000 times worse. And I don't think anyone understands how quickly this can devolve. And if the de-evolution is held by those individuals, which I'm assuming is their scheme, then really, like, it's hard to even put into words the destruction and the chaos and the hell that would bring to earth. Yeah. I think it's any person in communion with God is at some level attempting unity with Christ, or like parity with Christ. The created doctrines of the religions over these centuries or over these thousands of years have created the same structural stratification that existed during this Arian heresy. So it's the same thing. It's like to speak of that Jesus was just created is the same as to speak of somebody speaking about Christ is separate from, or is less than. This would not be in true reflection to the words of Jesus, who would say that we're all him. He's the placekeeper. He's the marker. But the journey is individual. So on this earthly plane, he's the checkpoint. He's the pin in the map. He's the compass direct. He's the north, true north, and the thing. So which is like taking a torch into a cave. You can go into a cave without a torch, and it's questionable. I've thought about this a lot. I've really thought about it. I've thought, is it better to go into a cave with a torch, knowing that the deeper you go with the torch, you may lose the torch and then be really, really stuck? Or do you begin the journey into the cave without a torch? And then I suppose the question is, why are you going into the cave? But yeah, I don't know. There's unfortunately there's been so much degradation to the concepts of the church, and I think this is where I do support the Church of England more than the Catholic Church, is purely because it is, or it has been seen to adapt during a heightened moment in the world. And I think it understands itself better, to put it into simple terms. The Church of England understands that it is a system to protect the identification of Jesus as the central figure. And it understands that it is a structural element that uses tradition and uses these concepts to do this task. The Church of England is a fan of the Catholic Church. And I think that sometimes fans understand artists or performers more so than they do themselves. Because as someone who is, and this is the same doubt. So if the Catholic Church has attached itself to the teachings of Jesus, it's a fan of Jesus. It's a traveling orchestra, or it has been. And the Church of England is a pub band, is a cover band, but not in the negative sense. And it knows what it is. It's there to entertain, which is true for all of them. Entertain, to hold focus, to hold power and influence, to get us back to the core. And it will tell whatever story it needs to tell. It will use whatever characters it needs to use, including the devil himself, including Lucifer, including putting Lucifer in the fold, in the mix, as equal, as another tool that God uses to teach us. It's really astonishing in my life how much larger the lessons sit with me, how much larger that influence have had on my life from extremely negative events as opposed to positive events. I don't think positive events really move the needle much at all, especially in this environment where we're saturated and drowning in algorithmic prisons of pleasure. But on that, I think both. I think the Church of England, Protestant Church, Anglican churches, whatever you call them, and the Catholics, I think they've all failed miserably in adapting to this online environment. And they're being exposed for kind of the type of colonization that in previous geographical expansion they'd succeeded in quite well, but no one has successfully built a church in the internet. Well, maybe they have, but that's the question, isn't it? Why isn't the church visible in the same glory of previous centuries? Well, that's what I've attempted to do, because it wasn't built by the church. The cathedrals weren't built by the church, by the bishops, by the clergy. That it was built by builders. It was built by men of spirit and of practicality. And is testament to the communion that they had with God, because it exists. They exist. These churches, these cathedrals, these places of worship exist and are venerated by being focal points of religions that are really in a state of deterioration. And I think this really truly was what was known by the builders and by the architects, by the master builders, master masons of these cathedrals, is that they were building in communion with God to extend well beyond their years and well beyond what they may have been experiencing from the church's administration at their time. And so there's a perpetual inheritance of religious folk that are inheriting buildings that may, in my observation, in my opinion, have always been produced in conflict with those administrations. And I hope that I've continued that tradition in my attempt to build a cathedral in the cloud.